As slave raids went, Saskia thought this was a rather bountiful one. The idiotic village she had acquired her new labor from had thought itself safe in the mountains, hidden away from her war band among its many caverns. They did not know she could smell their cowardice, like a sickening scent staining the air. Tracking them down, her war band had slaughtered most of their warriors, as well as a few of those who had disgusted them by surrendering. The rest they chained, leading them to the nearby plains, their final destination being the Bloodbound's holdings in the east. It was as they were near the Landris forest that one of her scouts had run to her. He had spotted a force preparing to assault them. The scout could not see them clearly, some sort of cowardly enchantment obscured his sight, but he could see enough to recognize the symbol of Aezerheim upon random flags and tents. Knowing what was coming, Saskia set her forces in position, the slaves in front while her blood warriors readied themselves behind them. It was a tactic she had used many times before against the forces of Aezerheim, their urge to protect weakness making them hesitant to attack the slaves. Almost to the minute after her forces were ready, she saw the enemy bursting through the trees. She expected to perhaps see the marching great swords of the Free Guild, some fanatical devoted, or, if she was really lucky, some golden-clad warriors of the Stormcast Eternals. What she got instead was a force of elves on strange lizard beasts. As the elven riders charged forward, Saskia shrugged. Blood was blood. Saskia had fought elves before. Always they were silent and resolute, attacking with a solemn sense of purpose she both hated and respected. These elves had no such composure. They yelped and yelled, their faces plastered with cruel smiles that somehow promised a slow and painful death. Their mounts snarled and bit the air, as if readying to bite into fresh flesh. At first, Saskia thought they were attempting to intimidate her forces. A futile action. All her warriors knew the displeasure they would feel from Khorne if they showed fear. After a moment, however, Saskia realized their true intentions. The display wasn't for the Bloodbound, but for the slaves. As the lizard riders charged, the slaves' fear of the elves outweighed their fear of the Bloodbound behind them. The Bloodbound only promised death. What the elves promised seemed so much worse. The slaves began to slow. Some of them stumbled, and quite a few even ran back towards the Bloodbound. The Bloodbound easily slaughtered the panicking slaves, but the action did slow them down and disrupt any cohesion they may have had. The elves had no such difficulty. They flowed through most of the slaves with ease. The rest they simply trampled with their mounts, their regard for the slaves as small as the Bloodbounds. Once they reached the Blood Warriors, they struck at vulnerable points. Individual warriors distracted by terrified slaves, as well as smaller warriors who had yet to feel the full effects of Khorne's blessing. Saskia saw they were scattering her army, turning it into more manageable chunks, hitting and fleeing repeatedly, while her slower warriors were unable to react. Her blood boiling in rage, Saskia charged the nearest fighter she could find. An arrogant pale elf charging on its lizard beast, its barbed lance aimed at her, most likely expecting her to fall like a common warrior, not knowing she was blessed by the dark gods themselves. She readied her axe, preparing to dodge the rider and split both he and its pet in twain when a massive roar shook the air, distracting her for but a second. It was in that moment the elf struck, his lance piercing and going through her chest and hitting the ground behind her. Before the elf could attempt to pull out the lance, Saskia grabbed it and prepared to hold her ground, looking up at the elf with a smirk. "It will take more than that to kill me, elf," she said confidently, waiting for the look of shock that so many others had when they dealt her what they thought was a mortal blow. The elf simply smiled before saying, "I know. That's why we brought the dragon." With that, he let go of his lance and turned his beast around, hurrying away. Confused, Saskia tried to pull the lance from her chest but found it stuck fast. Turning her head, she saw the lance's head had split when it struck the earth. Its split tip dug deep into the ground, trapping her. Up above, she heard the same roar that had distracted her previously. When she raised her head, she saw its source. A dragon with obsidian scales was flying straight towards her. Within its maw, she saw the beginning of its breath, a spray of acid that promised to leave nothing but a pool of green liquid where her body used to be. Saskia screamed in defiance, desperately trying to pull out the lance and promising to kill every elf in the realms with her bare hands. It was a promise the acid ensured she would never keep. Like the Order Draconis, the Order Serpentis ruled the skies with the power of dragons during the Age of Myth. Their menacing black dragons causing fear to their enemies and ensured loyalty from their allies. But, like so many other empires, the rise of chaos changed that. Their holdings were destroyed over the course of centuries. As for their mighty black dragons, the beasts were slaughtered, leaving a handful where before they had hundreds. To survive, the Order Serpentis did whatever was necessary to achieve victory. To compensate for their dwindling dragons, they used dark magic to shape the unborn creatures in their eggs, twisting them into smaller and more numerous beasts to use in combat. As for their methods of combat, that also changed, adopting hit-and-run tactics as well as using the power of fear to achieve victory on their enemies. Although no allies of the forces of Order, do not expect any modicum of mercy from the Order Serpentis. No method is too vile or brutal to achieve victory. They desire only revenge, to have chaos pay for what it took from them. And they will bring down anyone, whether friend or foe, to achieve this goal. The leader of these Ebon Drake war hosts are the Dread Lords. Flying on black dragons, they wish nothing more than to shove their weapons into foes while their mighty dragons lay waste with its breath. To serve under a Dreadlord is a risky proposition, for although they are powerful and ruthless warriors, they will not hesitate to kill any of their own who shows any sign of weakness, flaying the warrior alive as an example to others. The bulk of the Serpentis army are its Drakespawn Knights. Atop Drakespawn, the magically twisted children of black dragons. They ride into armies with barbed lance and blade, ready to cause as much death and pain among the enemy as possible. Led by a Dread Knight, they are a terrifying force to behold. When it is necessary to cut down groupings of weaker foes, the Dreadlord orders the use of the Drakespawn chariots, the scythe runners jutting from its side, slicing foes down in waves of blood and eviscerated limbs. The dark magic of the Order Serpentis has led to some truly twisted abominations, such as the War Hydra, a multi-headed beast far from the majesty of its dragon ancestors. It rips apart foes with clawed limbs, while unleashing fiery breath on hordes of screaming enemies. To be a member of the Order Serpentis is to be an avatar of cold-blooded vengeance, to strike down your foes with the jagged maws of your beasts and the barbed tips of your spears. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this Age of Sigmar video about the Order Serpentis, those riders of cold-blooded mouths. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe, and comment, and if you really like it, consider giving to my Patreon. With the extra money, it gives me the time I need to write these stories I love. Anyway, thanks for listening, and see you next time.